Hello, everyone. I hope you're all good. You should all have access to the chat function. And whilst we're running this in kind of a webinar way, you won't be able to share your audio or your video. Like, please do put in maybe a name, where you're coming from, your profession, just say hi, and just I want to make sure that people can actually pop questions in the chat function. We'll start in a minute as well. There we go. Good to know. Thank you, PJ. The chat function is working. And can everyone see here the live captions as well, just to make sure? Hey, Alison. Good, great. Live captions working. It all seems to be going well. I'm going to share my screen now. Just so that we can get started. Daniel, let me know if you can see this all okay. I'm going to make full screen.
Yep, that looks great.
Okay. Okay, I think we'll get started. I know more people might join and everything, but I'll get started now. So hello everyone, my name is Lewis. My pronouns are he, him. Just to give a little self-description for anyone who might be visually impaired, I am a man with fairly long hair, dark hair. I have a mustache and I'm wearing a orange jumper. I work in the culture team at Waltham Forest Council. I'm a cultural programming manager there, and I oversee the Make It Happen grants, which I'm sure is the reason many of you are here today. But also, you might just be joining because you want to find out more and understand more about creative health, and that's why we have Daniel here today, who is an expert in the field, and he'll be introducing himself shortly to talk a bit more. I am going to speak very quickly and fairly briefly about Make It Happen because the workshop today isn't just about the Make It Happen grants. But the reason that we're looking at creative health this year, and it's been slightly different to previous years because we've never looked at creative health and well-being, is because we wanted to kind of use Make It Happen as an opportunity to fund and pilot a lot of and seed fund a lot of projects across the borough that are focused on creative health and well-being, essentially. But the grant itself remains the same. We've been running it since around. It's been running for over 7 years in different iterations, and anyone in the borough, but also people from outside the borough, can apply for £1 to £15,000 to run a creative project anywhere across the borough. The deadline for submissions is the 6th of January. And we're investing a total of 100k in projects next year. The funding scheme has been designed to support culture and creative activities across Waltham Forest, happening between May and December next year. So we'll have this application process, and following the deadline, we're then going to go through a selection process, which will end around late February, and then the successful applicants will be announced around March time. As I've said, the refresh focus is around creative health, which we're going to be looking at in detail today. So Daniel will get into a far more in-depth explanation of this. This is something I've kind of pulled more from a description from the GLA, but creative health involves creative approaches and activities which have benefits for our health and well-being. That might include visual and performing arts, crafts, film, literature, cooking, creative activities in nature. And creative health activities involve creative and innovative approaches to health and care services involving co-production, education, and workforce development. And that's why it's a really exciting opportunity for us at the council, because one, it's a great learning opportunity for how we work across different teams, how culture works with public health and communities and the climate team. but it's also about how we can support local partners and upskill them around creative health. A lot of many will already be doing forms of creative health work. They might just not articulate in that way. This year we received 200 applications for Make It Happen, and we were only able to fund 16. But I'd say of those 200 projects, all of them had a creative health element, which was really interesting. And so it's a great opportunity for us to support and upskill local partners around creative health and develop their understanding. And even if you are applying for Make It Happen and you might not be successful, let me just take that. You might not be successful. There are other funding opportunities out there to look for and apply for. And we delivered a really great networking event this Monday at Waltham Trades Hall in collaboration with E17 Films. We were joined by a few different organisations, London Arts and Health. I'd recommend you to check them out. They're kind of like the go-to place for a lot of funding opportunities and development opportunities around creative health in London, and brought people from different sectors and backgrounds to network. And we had about over 100 people there, and it was brilliant to see people already starting to think about how they could work with other people and collaborate with them on their projects. We are searching for applications that propose pioneering and innovative approaches to creative health that connect with health and well-being and care services across Waltham Forest. We want to see new and interesting collaborations between different practitioners across the sectors as well. This image here is of a project that we actually funded in 2020, I believe it was, Kazoom Arts, who they work in different hospital settings, usually with children and their families that are going through some form of recovery. And we funded them to deliver this Apollo project on the Acorn ward at Whipps Cross Hospital. And just to plug, we've got a kind of green light from senior leaders at Whipps Cross Hospital, because we had a great conversation with some of their directors who have identified three specific wards, the strokes ward, an elderly ward, and one focused around mental health, to encourage us to program in and support local partners to do so. Anyone thinking about wanting to work in a hospital setting, I really encourage you to think about that. And we're partnering with Vital Arts, which is an organisation that works very closely with the Barts Health Trust hospitals, Whipps Cross just being one of them, to do that. So have a little think about whether you might be interested in developing your project proposal around Whipps Cross and other health settings in the borough. So why creative health? The Marmot report, which is it's in the resource section of the Make It Happen webpage, if you're interested to actually read the full report there, shows that there are significant health inequalities in Waltham Forest. Creative health programs have also been shown to improve health outcomes massively. And we know that creative health is an increasing priority for the Arts Council and the Greater London Authority, with the London Mayor having this strategic focus on building London as a creative health city. Manchester is the only one currently in the UK that has established itself as a creative health city, and we want London to be kind of the next one as a great example of it. That it's also why creative health is one of the 6 key action areas, including the Waltham Forest Council's new cultural action plan, which is hopefully, if it's fully signed off by the end of this year, will be published in the new year. And that has been formed through extensive research engagement with local partners, residents, through surveys, focus groups that we did, and internally across the council, to develop a cultural action plan that looks at developing an ambitious, but also an ambitious strategy that we can carry through over the next 5 years that's also achievable. And creative health and well-being is just one of those key action areas. So just on the funding criteria, creative health is obviously at the core of this year's Make It Happen. But we also have 4 other funding criteria that we look for. And when you look at the guidance pack that's on the Make It Happen webpage, we outline this in a bit more detail about exactly what we're looking for. So in terms of diversity and inclusion, we want to see projects that platform different perspectives and backgrounds. And we are committed to investing in projects from applicants from diverse diverse backgrounds, underrepresented and marginalized groups, and not just projects that are led by those groups, that are also working with those groups as well. And we list quite clearly some of the key cohorts that we're trying to target across the borough. We also try and prioritize projects that are happening outside of Walthamstow, because that's where that's the area of the borough that has the largest cultural infrastructure, the most investment going on, and it's trying to address some of those kind of inequalities across the borough. That's not to say that we don't fund projects that happen in Walthamstow, but they need to show clearly how they're either taking place in another area of the borough, or they're directly engaging communities in those underserved areas across the borough. Legacy is another big one that we try and get people to think about right at the application stage. So thinking about how projects have a long-lasting legacy. So if you were successful in receiving the funding, this is a project grant that needs to be delivered within a kind of just under a year's time frame. But how can you expand and grow the project in future years independent of our funding? Activating spaces is a new funding criteria that we've brought in, and that's trying to encourage people to think about overlooked, underused spaces across the borough to program in. And one thing I really want to push to all applicants is that we aren't trying to fund projects that we just know they're gonna work well and they're gonna be the same old formula. We want people to take risks, and part of taking risks is failing. Sometimes you might not get the same engagement that you've done. It might be a real challenge to program in a certain place that is quite difficult, and there might be some accessibility things that you need to overcome within that. But we want to encourage people to go to those spaces and trial things out, and not be afraid to fail, essentially. So that's one big takeaway that I want people to have after this session, if they are looking to apply for Make It Happen. And then the final one, which is a big one, is around creativity and ambition. So we want to fund projects that are unique and interesting, projects that we've never funded before, that engage people in really interesting ways. Just a note on the Access Fund, which we had last year, but we're kind of have upped the amount that we've put in for the Access Fund this year. So if you're successful, you can access up to and apply for £500 to address any barriers that you might experience. And that could be because of disability, carer responsibilities, a language barrier, you're a single parent, you might be on low income, anything, any sort of barrier that you might face. And it could also go towards things like travel, childcare costs, care support, a translator, an interpreter, or anything that can support you with the delivery of your activity. I think also in the context of creative health, there might be a lot of people proposing to work with vulnerable groups of residents that can be quite triggering, and it might be a new experience for you. So it's trying to support you, bringing in emotional support mechanisms as well for yourself or other facilitators that might be part of your project. When you are applying, you'll have to submit a budget sheet, and you can put in separately in the spreadsheet template that we've provided what you would apply for if you were successful to get it within the Access Fund. Finally, I just want to mention in terms of support. So I mentioned that we did the networking event on Monday. We do have, I think, a few people, because I sent an email out today, just double checking because the how to write a strong cultural grant application is in person, was fully booked. A few people have dropped out because they can't make it anymore. So I think there's 4 spaces still left on that. So if you're available on next Monday, 6:30 to 8:30 at Good Shepherd Studios, Daniel is going to be running that session as well. And it's going to be working with people on their project proposals, their ideas, looking at how you write strong cultural grants, not just a strong Make It Happen grant application, but with the specific focus and context of creative health projects. Me and my colleague are also going to be doing application support days where anyone that's thinking about applying can come to libraries across the borough to speak with me or my colleague, and we can guide you on how to best fit your project within the funding criteria and just give you more information. You can find more information about all of those, where they're happening and when they're taking place, on the Make It Happen 2025 webpage. So I'm just going to stop sharing now and hand over to Daniel.
Great, thanks so much, Lewis. I'm just going to double check that I can definitely share my screen. Can you see that opening slide, Lewis?
Yeah, that's
wonderful.
all good.
1 second while I just set everything up. Great, so I'm really pleased to be here with you all this evening. I'm Daniel Regan. I'm a visual artist and also the founder and creative lead of an organisation called the Arts and Health Hub. I'm really easy to find online, both my personal creative practice and also my organisation. Pretty easy to find in terms of websites and social media. So if you're interested in finding out more, please do give a Google. For self-description purposes, I am a light-skinned brown man. I've got a bald head. I've got quite a flamboyant jumper on right now, which is garish pink and green because I love bright colours. That's enough about me. I've got quite nice eyebrows. Yeah, that's a good enough description. I've been working in creative health for 20 years now. So to give a bit of context for what I do across the sector, I make work about my own mental health experiences as somebody with lived experience of mental health difficulties. I work on all sorts of different participatory projects that explore health and well-being, so both mental health and physical health challenges. I use my lived experience around mental health in consultancy and advisory roles. I run the organisation that I mentioned called the Arts and Health Hub, which is an organisation that supports other creatives that are exploring health in their practice in various ways. So if you are a creative, an artist, exploring health, do check us out and see the types of support that we've got available. And then I teach at King's College London. I teach medical students on a year-long medical humanities project. So I work on lots of different creative health projects, but from all different kinds of angles. So I've got a varied experience. And I'm really happy to be a resource for you. Ask me questions. I'm going to be talking about some helpful organizations and resources, talking about things that you might want to consider for a creative health project, giving you some excellent organizations and talking to you about why they're excellent and the different ways that they're working. And then I'll talk through 2 particular projects that I've worked on, so you get a sense of what it might be like to devise and develop and deliver a creative health project. Lewis, just checking that my slides are moving forward.
Yeah, they're moving forward fine.
Excellent. So as Lewis mentioned, if you're new to creative health, it might be helpful to start with some of the key organisations that are involved in delivering resources and training around creative health. Lewis mentioned London Arts and Health, which is the Arts Council England sector support organisation. So they are tasked with supporting organisations and creative practitioners to gain a better understanding of creative health, including looking at the landscape of creative health across London. To start with, there are some really interesting tools and resources. So, for example, looking at this understanding creative health in London, the scale, character and maturity of the sector. It can be really helpful if you're new to creative health at looking at the history and scale of creative health in London, thinking about mapping key organisations that have been instrumental and thinking about what's the type of work that they do or did and who was it with, how do they do that work, what's the development of creative health within the sector. It might give you a sense of the past history of this kind of work and help you to understand the landscape of creative health. There's a really helpful social prescribing mythbuster resource on the London Arts and Health website. And you might be new to social prescribing, and this might be something that you want to be involved in if you're developing a project proposal. So just for explanation, social prescribing is the formal connection between the health and cultural sector, if we're talking about the arts, and it enables people to be prescribed non-clinical activities, including arts activities by GPs, nurses and other clinical workers, and social prescribing link workers that are normally based within primary care centres like GP practices. So if you're thinking about, I'd really like to work within the health system or in partnership with the health system, it might be worth looking at the social prescribing mythbuster, because it not only demystifies what social prescribing is, but it gives really, really great examples of social prescribing projects. So it might give you some inspiration if you want to work in partnership with the NHS and give really, really clear advice examples on ways in which organisations and the healthcare service are working together. If we think about London Arts and Health being the London-focused sector support organisation, then the Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance is the sister organisation, which is the national sector support organisation for creative health. And that website has a wealth of reports, resources and knowledge that are all super helpful. So you may want to go off and do a bit of research there, again, to look at good examples of best practice, examples of how organisations are working with communities, where those kinds of organisations are based, who are they working with, what kinds of projects are they doing, how are they monitoring impacts. But you've got two fantastic localised and then national organisations that are Arts Council funded to do this kind of work and give you all of that information and backstory. And then the National Centre for Creative Health is a relatively new organisation that was formed in response to the all-party parliamentary group on arts, health and wellbeing that produced the Creative Health report that was released in 2017, which was a real landmark report on creative health. The National Centre for Creative Health focuses on good practice and research and informs policy and promotes collaboration, helping foster the conditions for creative health to be integral to health and social care and wider systems. So if you're unfamiliar with the concept of creative health, these are three really key and wonderful organisations that are full of resources to help you think about how to design and deliver creative health projects robustly and safely.
Daniel,
yes.
I'm sorry to cut you when you're in your flow, but one of the attendees just mentioned that they can't see your slides. So what I'm going to do is just share them. It might not be... Sure. I know they'll join on their phone, but I'm just going to share it and then you can continue talking. So let's just...
Sure, so I've stopped sharing now.
Yeah, sorry about that, if that is the issue, everyone. Right, you just tell me when to flick through and I'll present.
So I was on the helpful creative health organisations slide. So the wonderful.
Yeah. Bear with me. There we go.
There we go. So yeah, London Arts and Health. Those are the two key resources that I just cited there. So the scale of the sector and also the social prescribing mythbuster. So that obviously being London focused. The Culture, Health and Wellbeing Alliance being the sister organisation, which is the national body supporting creative health work across England. And then the National Centre for Creative Health being the newer organisation that looks at policy, collaboration, thinking about the connections between both the health and social care and wider systems. Of course, these are just three organisations, and there are lots and lots of amazing organisations that are doing incredible work in creative health. Lewis, could you change to the next slide for me? Yep. Please. Great. So thinking about some helpful resources to get you started. These are some key documents that I think it will be really helpful from different sort of viewpoints. So there's the Creative Health Quality Framework, and that's a best practice tool for working within creative health. And it focuses on 8 creative health quality principles, which I'll share in the next slide. The Creative Health Quality Framework was funded by Arts Council England and was developed with a creative health consultant called Jane Willis, who's really known in the sector. And it was created also in collaboration with over 200 people, and that included creative practitioners, participants, health commissioners, and researchers. And it's designed to, I can just see myself now, Lewis. There we go. It's designed to help anyone that is involved in the developing and delivering of creative approaches to supporting health and well-being. It's such a fantastic resource beyond just the 8 key principles. You might also want to look at Arts Council England's Creative Health and Wellbeing report. And this is a report that came out in 2022, and it could help you to think about aspects of designing your project. And that could be from how to work with healthcare professionals or the health services through to ways of supporting communities experiencing inequalities. And in this particular report, Arts Council England outline the importance of what they identify as the 3 Ps. So thinking about partnerships and working strategically. So you might want to think about, who am I working with? Thinking about the importance of place and embedding the work in a place-based approach. So where am I working? Whether that's across the particular borough or the venue that I'm working in, and also the practitioners that you're working with. So focusing on the skills development and safety of creative practitioners. So these are things that you might want to consider as important factors in your application. Who you're working with, where you're working with, and how you support those that you're working with. As I mentioned in the previous slide, the landmark 2017 Creative Health Report that came through the National Centre for Creative Health has, again, a wealth of information and evidence that you might want to refer back to evidence the importance of your project. In December 2023, there was an updated review of this report that was produced, and it's available to read over on the National Centre for Creative Health website. And it includes a number of recommendations and helpful resources, either in the full version or the executive summary and recommendations. And it's definitely worth a read if you're new to creative health, to acquaint yourself with up-to-date recommendations for working in this sector. And then lastly, obviously, when it comes to pay, people should be paid fairly. And that can sometimes be really hard to figure out. But there are really helpful guidance documents like Artists Union England's Rates of Pay document. And that gives you really clear guidance on sliding scales for costs of working with artists. It's a freely accessible document over on their website, and it gives you a breakdown of either hourly or daily rates of pay for artists with a range of experiences. And we should always consider that being an artist is a profession and should be compensated accordingly. I'd encourage you to always do less but better, rather than trying to do things on a shoestring and overpromise and underpay people. And so just as I hope that you would care about the experience of those receiving your activities and your participants, think about those that are working on your project and how you compensate them. Next slide, please, Lewis. So we should be on the 8 principles for, yep, this one. So the 8 principles from the Creative Health Quality framework are being person-centered, so valuing lived experience and enabling potential, being equitable, so working towards a more just and equitable society, thinking about safety, so doing no harm, ensuring safety and managing risk, that they should be creative, so engaging, inspiring and igniting change, being collaborative, working with others to develop joined up approaches, being realistic about what you can achieve, being reflective, so thinking about how you reflect, evaluate and learn from your project, and being sustainable, so working towards a positive long-term legacy for people and the planet. Could we move on to the next slide, please? I'd really encourage you to consider these key points when you're making your application and thinking about a creative health project. So who are you working with? What are the communities that you've identified? How are you working with them? What kinds of activities will you be doing? And what does it look like? How does a session look like? What's the design of that? Where are you working with these people? What's the venue? What's the particular, significance of that venue? What are the proposed health benefits? So what kind of experience do you hope for people to have? What do you hope the health benefits will be, whether those are slightly more in-depth or whether that's a general well-being experience? How might you document and evidence your project? How will you evaluate it? And to be realistic about what you can achieve whilst prioritizing quality. If you could go to the next slide, please. So these are just some examples of organizations that I really consider as doing excellent work, and they're working in different environments. So the Bethlehem Gallery, for example, is a gallery based on the site of a psychiatric hospital that works in partnership with the South London Maudsley Trust to support people that have been through mental health services of that trust to gain access to creative opportunities. They're obviously working within a hospital site, but thinking about how do we support people to have a non-clinical experience? How do we have a gallery and a workshop studio for people to make work, but where the people that are coming to that space are people with lived experience of mental health difficulties, and they do that so beautifully. And the same with hospital rooms, that they bring world-class art to psychiatric hospitals by changing the environment of the spaces. And they do that by commissioning artists to do these incredible installations that are based on creative workshops with people who are part of those mental health wards. So both of those are very clinically based spaces that would have significant considerations around safety because of the environments. Then we have places like St Margaret's House in Bethnal Green that run a number of creative health activities in the heart of the community. So anything from woodwork for wellbeing sessions through to a Bengali sewing group. So a really different type of demographic and a different type of considerations when designing a project, because it's less, I guess there's less severity in terms of thinking about the challenges that people might be facing. Consume arts that Lewis already mentioned, so thinking about working with young people impacted by trauma and adversity, and Consume are working across community, education and healthcare settings, providing a real range of different creative projects and types of activities that young people have different considerations, whether they're in the community or within healthcare environments. Red Earth Collective, a great example of a Black-led organisation that works with artists and communities with lived experience of mental health issues. That organisation has a particular focus on supporting ethnically diverse participants. So perhaps it's important for you to ask the question, who is it that you want to support? What are the demographics of that group? Is it a particular ethnic group that you want to support? Breathe Arts Health Research, fantastic organisation. They have this really pioneering Melodies for Mums programme, which is a singing programme for new mothers and their babies looking to boost emotional and mental well-being. And then Fabrica, based in Brighton, they have tons of participatory projects, but I wanted to bring your attention to particularly how they're working with men. So they have a Men in Sheds project that works with men using a side-by-side approach instead of face-to-face. So it supports men sharing tools and resources to work on projects of their choosing, whereas their Men Who Make project is a creative mental health and well-being project for adult men experiencing mental health. So these are some really clear examples of how organisations are working in particular environments with particular groups. And that's really important for you to consider when you're thinking about your own creative mental health projects. I'm going to whiz through just 2 projects of mine to give you a sense of, again, working in a particular place, working with particular groups, some of the considerations that you might want to consider. So this is firstly a project working with historic royal palaces, and it was a project looking at George III, and it was called The Mind Behind the Myth. Thank you. And this was a project that I worked on with Kew Palace, which is based in Kew Gardens, which was focusing on an upcoming exhibition focused on King George III, who's often called the Mad King. And I was invited to work on the project related to an exhibition that would be coming up, and they wanted me to work with a group of men with lived experience of mental health difficulties. And of course, when we think about going to an exhibition, if you see, a curatorial label next to an object, it's normally a factually written curatorial label by a curator. And I was working with a group of men to add some additional labels that offered insights into what it's like to be a man today living with mental health. Review of what it's like to be a man living with mental health struggles. I was really apprehensive initially when they approached me because I was worried about whether this would be exploitative of the men. And I had lots of questions and concerns about how we would make sure that the men felt really respected and that they were not being exploited and that the project wasn't extractive. But after I had really good chats with the people from historic royal palaces, I really understood that the design of the project was really thoughtful and respectful to the men's experience. Next slide, please, Lewis. And so to begin with, the men were invited to a taster day to get a tour of the palace and become familiar with Kew Gardens and get a sense of what the project design looked like. And then those that decided that they wanted to return were able to meet with the curators of the exhibition and ask questions, lots of questions. There was plenty of time, so that they didn't feel that they were an inconvenience. There was also a really good lunch, and good food is a way of showing people that you care about them. So really lovely refreshments. The men were shown items that would be shown in the exhibition and were able to ask questions to the curators about the significance of them. And my role was to run a number of creative writing workshops to support them to think about not only why these objects in the exhibition were important to King George III, but what items were significant to them in their connection to mental health. Next slide, please, Lewis. Each session had a different activity, and that had a different level of depth when it came to reflecting on their mental health. It was really important that I built trust with the group, so we didn't just immediately dive into having difficult conversations about mental health. We got to know each other, and that was a progressive thing, an incremental thing. In one of the final sessions, they were asked to bring in an object of particular significance that connected to their own mental health. And then they produced a piece of writing about why it was important to them, both past, present, and future. The sessions were really moving and emotional, and it was important that we didn't bring up in-depth personal traumas, because we wanted to make sure that people felt psychologically safe in the sessions. So it was really important to let people know this is what this session is and this is what this session isn't. And one of the things that I asked Historic Royal Palaces was also about my own care and safety. You know, what kind of budget is available to me if I need to access some support? And Historic Royal Palaces said, we've already got some contingency budget available. So if you need to see a therapist because something has been distressing to you, we can arrange that. Next slide, please. The men were treated with the utmost respect. So they were taken on site visits to Windsor Castle and Hampton Court Palace. One of the key values of the project was around dignity and respect. So they were given private tours by the curators. One of them is here, Polly pictured. They got to meet with the conservators. And at no point in the project did they feel that they were being exploited. Instead, they felt like they were being deeply respected and a valuable part of the process of putting together this exhibition. Next slide, please. One of the things that I love to do is think about how we might end sessions together. So I created a book based on the creative writing that they produced and photographs that I made across the duration of the project. And in the final session, I led a bookbinding session where each of the participants learned how to make a book, which they got to keep. So it was a memento of their experience across the project. Next slide, please. Because endings can be really difficult when you're looking at devising a participatory project. So it's important that you think about, what kind of experience can we use to mark the ending of perhaps this funded project, and think about how a group might continue to meet outside of the funding. You know, can you upskill somebody to become a facilitator? And it might mean that the group meets in a different format, but I think always talking about endings almost towards the beginning manages people's expectations. So next slide, please. And here you'll see one of the curatorial labels as part of the exhibition. So Roberto was talking about in Portugal, where I am from, the crown is not as important as in the UK. It reminds me of a stamp seal my grandmother used on her letters. I got rid of all of my possessions when I was unwell, but kept a bag of my grandmother's letters. So all of that work that went into the workshops, sort of the final piece was for them to write these curatorial labels. And then I'll whiz through very quickly this second project, which is called If Homes Had Ears. So you can go to the next slide. So this was in partnership with the British Library. And this is a project that was exploring sound and visual arts. So the British Library has a sound archive of about 4 million sounds. And they'd asked me if I'd like to work with a community group to engage with the sound archive. So I said, yes, I'd love to work with older LGBT people. And I identified a charity called Opening Doors. Sadly, this charity closed, I think, last year, but it's a charity that supports older LGBT people. One of the sound curators had already put together a collection of sounds called If Homes Had Ears. And that was a collection of sounds of the home that were themed by rooms and domestic spaces. You can move on to the next slide. And this was an opportunity for participants to respond to particular sounds, so oral histories and ambient sounds related to domestic spaces, and for us to have conversations about their lived experiences and create visual artworks in response. You can go to the next slide, sorry. So yeah, each session was themed in terms of a room, so for a living room, a bedroom, a kitchen, and each session was also creatively themed. So sometimes we were doing poetry, sometimes we were doing visual arts, printmaking. But I guess what came out of this and the sort of creative health aspect was that some of the sessions were deeply personal. If we're talking about sounds that can be very triggering, some of the people in the group had quite difficult experiences growing up, or quite difficult experiences in relation to home and relationships. And so again, it was very obvious that we had to be very clear about the boundaries of what this group is and what this group isn't, that this wasn't a specific mental health group. There might be some well-being elements. You may have some therapeutic aspects of participating in this group, but being really clear about what this group is and what this isn't to ensure that people felt safe in the sessions. People brought up all sorts of conversations around family, both past and present, their own health and well-being, their identity as queer people. But the most important thing is that the sound and the art making was the catalyst for those conversations. A point just here on partnerships. Opening Doors are the experts on supporting older people with older LGBT people. The reason that I chose to work with this community is because I'm a queer person myself, but I had ideas about what the group might want to do, and Opening Doors sometimes said no, the group will not want to do that, and I trusted that because they are the expertise and the people they support. So if you're working in partnership with another organisation, it might be really important to take their feedback on board and think about them as the experts in working with a particular community. And it also made me think about when I had an assistant on this project, it was really important that that assistant identified as queer, so that it was a very queer-led space for queer people. So if you're thinking about how you want to support communities, maybe it's important to consider, is this the right community for you to support? What connection do you have to that community, if any? What kind of experience would you like them to have, and with who? And then the last two slides, again, coming back to making books with groups. It's just something that I really, really love to do. Next slide, Lewis. So yeah, again, making books out of work that's made so that people have a memento of their experience of the project. And I can end there and answer any questions. Yeah.
I'm going to stop sharing and just admit. I did see there was one question I'm just getting up the chat from Michelle. Hi, is there a list or map of creative health experts and organisations based in Waltham Forest? Well, there isn't currently, but I believe I'm getting this right, but there is an individual, a creative health associate, funded within the NHS East London Barts, I forget the official title, the ICB, who is looking at creative health mapping across North East London. So there's the Arts Council, I believe, funded these roles, which are going on until May next year, and they're across London. So you've got one in the South East, for example. So that work is currently happening across North East London, and we are interested to perhaps look at developing that within Waltham's Forest specifically as well. But does anyone just have any questions directly for Daniel? Thank you so much, Daniel. That was such an interesting presentation. I've got one from Sarah here. Do you signpost people onto mental health services if needed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's really important that you recognize the limitations of your own capacity. So when I'm working on a project as an artist, I, really clearly state I'm not a therapist and I'm not a substitute for mental health services. So I might put together a list of signposting resources, both kind of localized. So I live in Southwark. It might be these are local organizations that you can contact, but also reminding people that sometimes a project might not actually be right for you. If what you're looking for is mental health support and this is not a mental health support group, it could actually be damaging for you to come here. And it could also be really difficult for other participants, if somebody is using this as a sort of mental health support group. So I think it's always really clear that you explain to people, this is what this project is and this is what it isn't. And sometimes there needs to be a bit of a screening with participants. What are you looking to get from this, experience of participating? And it might help you identify, maybe this isn't the right thing for you, but here's a list of resources, for specialist clinical support. Because what you don't want to do is get into a situation where, somebody is actually in distress in your groups and you could have maybe mitigated that by having a chat with them beforehand.
Daniel, I'm conscious like people are putting questions in the chat, but because it's 7:45 and we're a bit over, I
Yes,
just want to bring in Alison. What we can do is
I
we
can respond in
can
the chat as
yeah,
well.
yeah, and respond to the chat, but towards the
Sure.
end as well, we can answer questions. Now, Alice, I should have given you permission to share your screen. Let me do that again. If not, let me. No, Mike. So you should be able to share your video. No camera. No mic. Are you with us, Alice?
Yeah, can you?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm trying to see you. Is the thing.
Oh, can you not?
I can see Alice, but I
Oh,
can't hear
brilliant.
you very well, Alice.
I can't see.
Alice, your mic is very low for me.
Yeah, it's quite low for me as well.
Okay, I'll try and. Is this okay?
It's a bit better. Yeah.
Okay.
If you project and then.
Yeah, I'll be really loud, so hopefully.
So
you can hear
Alice,
me.
I've spotlighted you, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share my screen again to get up your slides. Bear with me.
Well,
Mm.
I'll just do a little description.
Yes.
So yeah, so my name is Alice. I am a white 24. With.
Oh, Alice, your audio seems to be cutting out. I'm not sure why.
Okay.
Speak again. I am hearing you, but it's sometimes dropping out. But continue speaking. I'll let you know if it does drop off, and we'll try and yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so my name is Alice Burnhope. I am a full-time textile artist, workshop. My practice is in community building.
It keeps Alice. Unfortunately, it keeps cutting out. I'm wondering. I don't know what the issue might be. I'm wondering if for now it might be gone. What's your suggestion?
I'm gonna try on my phone.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll go to Jasper, who's our other speaker, and then we'll do his and then go back to yours.
Okay,
And
perfect.
hopefully,
Sorry,
don't
guys.
worry. Hey, it's all good. It's all fine.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing and I'll just find Jasper. Sorry about this, everyone, but technical issues can't be helped. I'll stop spotlighting you. And then Jasper. So Jasper, I've allowed your camera and mic. You want to turn that
Hello,
on?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good stuff. Hi, everyone.
I've just spotlighted you, Jasper, and I'm going to share my screen. If you want to give yourself a little introduction.
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here this evening. My name's Jasper. I'm a man in his early 30s with long dark hair and rectangular glasses, and I'm wearing a grey sweatshirt. I'm the program manager at Raw Material Music and Media. We're an organisation based down in Brixton. You can go to the next slide, Lewis. It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so I'm the program manager at Raw Material, a music charity in Brixton. So I'll be talking you through some of our programs and how we approach creative health. This is sort of the structure of the next 15 minutes or so. So I'll chat a bit about who we are. I'll do an overview of Raw Sounds, which is our it's kind of our core creative health offer. And then I'll talk about a few of the different programs that we offer within that, including InReach and our one-to-one studio sessions, and a bit about what's next for Raw in terms of creative health. Next slide, please, Lewis. So yeah, we're Raw Material. We're a music charity and arts council MPO based in Brixton. And our mission is about making a creative life a tangible reality. So we run a variety of music and media programs for children and young people and adults, from live jams to studio sessions to beat production, DJing, and so on. We've been operating for about 30 years now, originally based out of somewhere in King's Cross, but then we moved in the mid-90s to our current home in Brixton, which you can see in the top left photo there. We're lucky enough to own that building, and for the last 18 months, the building has been a bit of a building site, so we're refurbishing it, and so we've been operating from a temporary home at St Vincent's Community Centre. Since 2012, we've been more actively working within creative health with the launch of Raw Sounds, which I'll get onto shortly. But essentially, that shift in 2012 it represented a shift towards us working more closely with mental health services, particularly South London and Maudsley Trust, so SLAM. And with that shift, a number of participants are now today those accessing SLAM and inpatient services, or perhaps on discharge. So we get around 300 referrals a year from mental health services. They come through occupational therapists, social prescribers, care workers, or people can also self-refer. And we've really seen this number go up in recent years as sort of creativity for mental health has become more widely talked about, and as one intervention, and particularly with the increase in funding towards it. Next slide, please. Just briefly on that last slide, actually, basically, as you can sort of see in there, there's various spaces within our building as well. So we have music studios in there. We have a live room where we do sort of performances and band jams. And then we have a what's called a loft upstairs, which is a multi-purpose space, which is where a lot of the DJing and so on happens. And so we see a lot of activity come through the building. It's a really exciting space. Next one, please, Lewis. So yeah, creativity for mental health. This is just some feedback from one of our participants who said that it helps me get up every morning, something to look forward to be creative and expressive with. It brings brightness to my day, and without Raw, it would be dark. Next slide, please, Lewis. So Raw Sounds is our award-winning creative health program. It's a holistic set of activities to support health and well-being for adults. We deliver about 230 sessions a year for this program, which is split into various 10-week term time skills-based programs. So that really varies. It includes The Voice, which is our singing sessions, Beat Lab, which is music production lessons, DJing and guitar lessons, a band songwriting project called Vibe Alliance, and Mindful Music, which is definitely one of our most popular offerings, which is essentially an improvisational, in the moment music making drop-in session. And it's definitely one of my favorites too, because it's one of these where basically each week all abilities are welcome, as is the case with all our programs, and we sit in a circle, pick up an instrument, percussive or drum or a melodic instrument, and jam around the one bar phrase for about 2 hours. And our CEO also joins each week, so it's like a really nice way to connect with the programmers, with the participants as well, and is a really nice way for me to break up my Tuesday afternoon as well. Over the years, we've established quite clear values that really underpin how Raw Sounds work and how our creative health offer works. So we really value our members as creatives, not patients, and I think this is really key, because it means that we're treating participants as people, not patients accessing a health service. It helps to build that relational trust and ensures that our spaces aren't seen as a clinical environment, because fundamentally they're not. We try to meet people where they're at, recognizing that different people come to our sessions for different reasons, that they have a variety of abilities and needs, and really we try to adapt to meet their needs. It's therapeutic, not therapy. Which is really about creating the conditions for creativity to do the work. Managing expectations and focusing on the benefits of creativity first and foremost. We try to create formal and informal opportunities to lead, trying to give people progression routes where possible. We had one of our DJ participants play at the South Bank Centre's Community Day earlier this year, which gives them opportunity to progress as well. Which leads me to broad outcomes, which I think is really linked to a number of these, particularly meeting people where they're at. Some people come to our sessions with clear outcomes in mind. Others just want to have a go and pick up an instrument and break up their week, or just have that opportunity to socialize and so on. We host an end of term concert, which gives people an opportunity to share what they've been working towards, and it helps us mark the end of the term as well. So that's another sort of internal outcome that we have as well. we're a music charity first and foremost, and so I think yeah, a key part of this, as I was saying before, is that like recognizing that it's not a clinical environment and that we want to meet our members where they're at as sort of participants in the programs who have come to experience the benefits of creativity and perhaps learn new skills, socialize, and so on. Next slide, please. So looking at some of the impact from raw sounds, we see that the programs do help alleviate people's anxiety, depression, loneliness, and isolation. They raise their confidence, and people feel like they're valued members of our community, where they get their opinions heard. And part of the way that we ensure that can happen, those last 2 points, is that we create space to involve our members in the design of programs and to feedback on them. So once every 4 months, we host a programming committee where artist facilitators pitch programs that they want to run at Raw Material, and our members vote on what they'd like to see. And again, similar to what Daniel was saying before, at those programming committee meetings, we put on some food and we really make sure it's a sort of social environment in which people want to come and they can sort of feel like they're sharing in and invested in our programs, because it's as much for them as it is for all of us. So that feels really key. Next slide, please. This is just some feedback from that came out of the blue one time. We received an email from a counsellor who said, "I've been working with a client in counselling for 2 years who has recently been on one of your courses for people with mental health issues. I wanted to share how wonderful it has been to see my client grow in confidence, challenge himself, and find joy through your courses and support. Yesterday, he reflected on how he is the happiest he has ever been and has been inspired by your work to go on and help others. He has found new meaning in his life. And after a few weeks on your course and the vital performance at the end, I want to thank you for what you have done. It is working, and I wish you all the best on your ongoing efforts to help those with mental health needs." And I think this really encapsulates a lot of what we try to do with our programs in terms of helping people grow, build their confidence, build their skills, challenge themselves, find joy and support, and have outcomes at the end where they get to perform for others on the course and show what they've achieved throughout the 10-week program. Next slide, please, Lewis. So InReach was a program that was part of our wider Raw sessions for about 10 years, from 2012, when unfortunately no longer running it, but and it was before my time. But I know that we used the creative health quality framework that Daniel mentioned earlier to design and assess the program. And essentially, it was a community outreach program in ward settings. So our facilitators and tutors would go on to wards, consult with occupational therapists and ward staffs to understand the needs of participants, and then shape music activities around that. The actual activity would really vary. It was about meeting patients again where they're at. So some might want to do the writing, but want to do it verbally as opposed to writing it down to meet their needs. It was, and also the other thing, I think the other key thing with this is that the desired outcome of InReach as a program was about getting patients engaged. So if there was a creative outcome, that was great. If there was a skills development, even better. But ultimately, creative engagement and well-being aspects took the foreground. So our facilitators weren't going in to do work necessarily, but work with people. And yeah, I think a vital part of the ward-based work is that we can offer a transition. So with Raw Material also being based in Lambeth, participants would often perhaps join our programs afterwards. Another thing that's sort of key to understand, I suppose, is that with us being based in Lambeth, where there is a high proportion of people that come from diverse backgrounds, there's wider health inequalities, and that's also reflected in the disproportionate number of Black and global majority people on mental health wards. Our facilitators often have lived experience of one or more of those aspects, and I think that really helps with meeting participants or communities where they're at, ensuring that they feel safe in the sessions and engaging with them on their terms, which kind of goes for all our programs, really. Sorry,
jump the gun there, Jasper. Sorry.
That's all good. So yeah, just going back to those stats basically. So in our last year running the program, we ran 26 sessions across acute mental health wards with 148 participants. 90% of participants reported an increase in wellbeing and confidence, and 92% of participants said that participating had alleviated their apathy, loneliness, or social isolation. Next slide, please, Lewis. So I just wanted to briefly talk about our one-to-one individual provision, which is where our studio sessions come in. So our studio sessions essentially offer participants one-to-one time with a sound engineer. For adults, that's an hour and a half, and for children and young people, that's an hour, and they can come in and work on music that they're perhaps writing, might be lyrics, might be producing music, and essentially they act as a really good starting point for one-to-one support to develop skills, build confidence, and a wide range of skills throughout that process. One specific case study is an example is Cole, who came into our studio sessions not really speaking very much, not making eye contact, needing a lot of support. And after 6 months of working towards his goals, he's now so much more engaged. And we spoke about doing some promo work last week with him, and he was able to really articulate that he knows that it'd be good to push himself, but he's not quite ready yet. So we ended up working with him in a different capacity. But what's great is that these sessions offer a one-to-one basis with which people then can transition to a group setting if that suits their needs. Since COVID, and we've sort of seen an increase in schools and social prescribers reaching out for creative interventions that might benefit people on a one-to-one level, and that's where our studio sessions have really helped support individuals. Next slide, please. So finally, just in terms of what's next for Raw in terms of creative health. So in 2025, we'll be returning to our refurbished building where we'll continue to deliver our core existing program. And then we're working on two very exciting creative health offers. One, working closely with Oval Learning to create a pathway from 40 Lambeth schools to 4 creative partners for young people with emerging mental health difficulties to sort of make that transition a lot more easier for those that have emerging mental health difficulties. And then secondly, we're working on a project called Creating Communities, Creating Change, the 4 Cs, bit of a mouthful. And that's essentially developing a one-stop shop for parents and young people experiencing mental health difficulties. And so that's very much early phase. We're doing some focus groups in January and February to try and understand what that might look like, how we might, and that's bringing in young people, it's bringing in parents and putting a question to them about like what are the needs, what's missing in terms of service provision, and how can we support them or create a new offer through a future developed program, working in partnership with Maudsley Hospital. That's it from me, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, I forgot that I was on mute. If anyone has any questions for Jasper, thank you so much for that, Jasper. It was really, really interesting and inspiring to hear like the reach of some of your programs. I found it really interesting as well about it's therapeutic, it's not therapy, and being really clear about that as well. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? Oh, Natasha asks, have you confirmed who your 4 creative partners are?
Yes, I believe so, because that was through I'm actually having my first meeting with that project on Monday next week. So, but I believe that was part of the bid, part of the initial bid that we put in was with 4 of the creative partners. So that's already locked in. I can't quite remember who they were though, which I realise is unhelpful.
Do you usually work with local creatives, local artists? So you bring in people from outside?
In terms of artists, facilitators, we work with some that are local, some that are from outside. We often get people who are putting in perhaps Arts Council bids and they want to bring in a sort of element that has creative engagement in it in some capacity, and we partner with them on their proposals. But a lot of our facilitators are perhaps local or are working already within the space level, and so it applies to them. The one area, so the programming committee that I mentioned, that's where we start to see like a lot of different new artists facilitators come in, which can be really, really exciting and interesting to sort of see what other perspectives and other programs people want to bring. And from our participants' point of view, we often see that they're really keen to get more opportunities that are perhaps creative entrepreneurship related, that helps them sort of develop their career as or like their journeys as artists and musicians.
Yeah, that was a lovely idea, that you've developed in terms of giving people that opportunity to input directly on what programming is happening. I think maybe for people thinking about applications that are going forward for, that's something definitely that a lot of funders look for. We would look for as well, not just collaboration, but like co-curation and co-production of programs itself. I think really interesting. Any more questions for Jasper before I go over to Alice? Do you link in with Core Arts in Hackney? Sarah asks.
Not that
Do you
I'm
know
aware.
Core Arts?
Not that I'm aware, no.
Okay, if there's no more questions for Jasper, then thank you, Jasper. Thanks a lot. If you just if you stop sharing your screen, and then I will pass over to Alice. But if people do have any more questions, what I might do is if you put it in the chat and Jasper isn't here any longer, I can feed them back and I can send you connections. Yeah, if that's okay, Jasper.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to share my email, Lewis, and I'm happy to answer any. So
Brilliant. Thank you.
Great.
All right, great. Okay, Alice, let's see. You should have your mic and screen available.
Okay, is this better?
It is. That seems better right now.
Okay.
Let me stop spotlighting Jasper and I'll spotlight you.
Okay, perfect. I had a backup Teams on my phone, so I might take that off now.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, if it's possible for you to share the document, that'd be great.
Yeah. Crisis averted. Let me come off this, and then there we go. Let me just present. There we go. Over to you, Alice.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And so sorry, everyone. I appreciate your patience. So yes, my name is Alice. As a description, I'm 27 years old, blonde, curly hair, and I'm a full-time textile artist and workshop facilitator. And my practice, it's rooted in community building, empowerment, and enhancing well-being. And this all stems from my journey overcoming anxiety and my frustrations with my disabilities. So within my practice, I create and co-create wearable art, safe cocoon-like spaces with waste textiles, and I aim to offer therapeutic experiences that address our sort of primal need for comfort and safety. And my work focuses on designing spaces that help individuals and communities navigate challenges in like a comforting and empowering way. And thinking about this workshop, what is creative health? So to me, when I was sort of brainstorming, I was like, well, for me, it's supporting people's health through the arts and craft, making arts more accessible to everyone, regardless of abilities or disabilities. In doing so, making universal well-being and empowerment. And how I do that is through being a creative practitioner and an artist educator. So next slide, please. Amazing, thank you. So on the left-hand side of the presentation, here are some images of my personal artwork, which all focuses on well-being and the natural world. And then to the right is my sort of community portfolio with themes of skill sharing, empowerment and connection. And I'll be talking more specifically about one of them today, but within the images to the right, we have projects with Art House Jersey, London Borough of Culture, which was Lewisham Borough of Culture, which was 2022 to 2023, and Royal Horticultural Society as well. So next one, please. Amazing. So for my business model, I work B2B, so business to business. So I work with different clients from museums, charities, art organisations, fashion brands and schools. Some of these clients have included like Buckingham Palace, the Royal Maritime Museums, Henry Moore Foundation. And with these clients, I work with their audience groups, which are diverse audiences, such as SEN, young families, young carers, and people suffering with dementia or living with dementia, physical disabilities, and people that have experienced homelessness as well. Next slide, please. So one of the case studies I'd love to talk through today is the Gardens of Imagination programme, which I did with the Royal Horticultural Society, focusing in Lewisham, because I should note also my studio is at Cockpit Studios in Lewisham, hence why a lot of my things are based within that borough. So the location was Lewisham, and focusing on several different community gardens within this space, all connected to the co-creators. So the project was with RHS, and they, with me working with the community producer in Lewisham, managed to get about 10 to 25 people, co-creators are called them, from Lewisham, and they were all green growers from lots of different gardens within the borough. And these participants or co-creators were super, super beautiful, all a mixture of ages and also mental health difficulties or people with living with dementia as well. And the whole sort of idea of Gardens of Imagination programme was looking at a modern day herbal. So for them, or previously in the 1500s, a herbal would be a plant or a big book of all the different plants and medicinal qualities of them, whereas today we don't need that due to pharmaceuticals. So it was looking at what is a modern day herbal today. And over the 10 months, we investigated that through creative skills using the RHS collections. And I'll show you where we gravitated towards over those 10 months. So next slide, please. So within this project, there were some considerations to think of. So within the co-creators, there were certain dynamics, and a couple of the dynamics were previous relationships, such as a difficult doctor-patient relationship. So within thinking about this project, I was there to sort of provide support and also offer separate sessions when needed. Safeguarding for vulnerable participants as well, and also some of the participants or co-creators were carers as well, so it was being flexible and offering different sessions, whether it's a different day or online as well. And then also adapting the workshop with techniques and tools, making it super accessible for everyone with their abilities, and also being aware and conscious of Lewisham's diverse cultural, social and economic environment as well. Next slide, please. So the challenges within this project, there wasn't many because it was super wholesome and super beautiful, but one of the first challenges was ensuring that everyone was on the same level to express themselves creatively, that's the word, because some people have already done some creative projects and other people hadn't participated in the arts since school, so that could, like, 30 years plus really. So is it ensuring that everyone had similar abilities within the creative arts to express themselves. And we did this I laid out all my different skills and I got everyone to vote for the different techniques they wanted to learn. And then we started from drawing, colour theory, compositional work, then creating collaborative drawings, and then specialising in the techniques that they wanted to learn. So over the 10 months, there was 12 different workshops, and it was ensuring each workshop everyone was confident in the techniques they were learning. Another challenge was also as a co-creation project to ensure everyone's voice is heard within the visual collective response at the end. And another challenge was the logistics with 35 co-creators and excess needs within the workshop locations, as we focused on mainly having the workshops in the gardens. So it was like ensuring there was ramps, less steps, tables and toilets. So next slide, please. So the impact, it was super beautiful. I'll be going through some testimonials shortly, but the impact was empowerment, boosted well-being, a community of new friends, resilience with new sustainable transferable skills as well. So we did lots of mending techniques which are transferable to make beautiful artwork, as well as taking home and mending their garments or textiles and sharing that with their friends and family. And also a legacy within Lewisham green growing spaces as well, which you'll see in a second. So next slide, please. So over the 10 months, we went through all these different techniques, and we sort of started to pick out what is a modern day herbal for them. Like, is it the actual experience of being in nature, or is it the medicinal qualities of plants? And through the investigation, we found that it was actually the meditative and therapeutic aspect of nature and green spaces for them. So they wanted to create an exhibition at the end. Excuse me, sorry. And in that exhibition, it was more of immersive, sort of sensory orientated installation, sort of taking their experiences of being in nature and providing that within a space in Lewisham. So this was at Hearts Lane in Lewisham, and it was a collective identity but also individual pieces as well. So you can kind of see in the right hand image individual responses and quotes as well. Next slide, please. So here is some feedback from the co-creators during the workshop. So one of them was, Alice's enthusiasm and expertise are inspiring. Oh, 1 second. So sorry. Alice's enthusiasm and expertise are inspiring. She made the whole experience fun, and it was really enjoyable learning new creative skills. Next slide, please. And here are some testimonials from the exhibition as well. So right at the end of the exhibition, we created a map of Lewisham, a textile map of Lewisham. And within that map, it had 5 different locations that the co-creators voted for as sort of their modern day herbal, like places they would go to that they feel sort of meditative and really helped their well-being. And there was little quotes as well in these areas. So we had this big map, and we invited the audience, the public, to come in and add little sort of toggles to it, little pass-it notes on it about what is our modern day herbal, and within Lewisham highlight places that we might not know of. So for the co-creators, they chose the Horniman and Sydenham Gardens, and we were able to see, like, uncover new gems within Lewisham. So on one of the testimonials, we would start off with saying the most interesting thing I thought about the exhibition today is, and here were some of the testimonials, all of the works, you can see the amount of time and thought that has gone into them, hearing the journey from interception to completion and how much everyone has enjoyed themselves, who has worked as a team to create. And another nice one was the best I've seen in ages. So there were some like testimonials from the public about the whole experience of the exhibition. Next slide, please. So on reflection, this really reinforced my core values as an artist of interaction, connection, well-being, experience, co-creation, and nature. The project was just beautiful from start to finish, and it also showed the beauty of working with others to support their emotional and creative development and empowerment as well. And right behind me on the photo, you can kind of see a glimmer of the Lewisham map and some of the information on it. So yeah, sorry about all the the coughing, but yeah, any questions, just shout.
No, thank you, Alice. That was lovely. And don't worry about the coughing. It's all good. Just want to say, like, it's such a beautiful practice that you have. And I think for people on this call, I know we'll have a mixture of those like creative organizations, people that might not even be creative at all. And we'll have individual artists as well. And through Make It Happen, we have funded individual artists, facilitators, and practitioners. And just to kind of show like how where you can take your practice. And I think for a lot of for Make It Happen especially, you might not have worked with specific groups, you might not have worked in health, well-being, or care settings, but this is a great opportunity for you to expand your practice if you've always been thinking about that. And I think you're a brilliant example of like work that you do, and just some of those pieces look beautiful, that were created as part of the exhibition and the project itself. But I wanted to see, yeah, if we perhaps can go over a little bit, maybe another 10 minutes, so that we can give a good amount of time if anyone has questions for Alice. So pop them in the chat, please, if you do have any. And Daniel, if you have any as well that you want to maybe ask.
You can ask me anything, I'm an open book.
Just all lovely comments. What a great project. Love the nexus of nature and art in your work.
Thanks, guys. You're being too kind. I've been a bit of a hot mess
Really,
tonight.
really beautiful work. Thank you, Alice. If no one has any questions, just for Alice, then please ask any other general questions that you might have for Daniel for his previous presentation, or about Make It Happen. We've got 10 minutes left, so any questions that you might have, now's your time to ask. Oh, we got one for you, Alice. Do your participants usually have any previous experience with this type of work, or is it all newly learnt during the sessions?
Really good question, thank you. It's a big mix actually. I normally work with different specific community groups, and within that community groups, they will have a wide scope of sort of experience and abilities. So sometimes there might be someone that's even done like a degree in creative arts to other people that haven't really experienced it since they were 14 years old. So yeah, so most of the time it's like the latter. So it's all new experiences, which is really, really beautiful, being able to Skillshare and see them blossom.
Yeah, that's lovely. We got one from Sarah. How did you link in with different organizations you work with?
Really good question as well. Applying for opportunities, going on newsletters, finding little nuggets of opportunities. So like Crafts Council, Cockpit Studios, AN, Artists, Art Rabbit, all these places to find really cool clients. And then sometimes I just like find a dream client, I just email them as well. So it's like a big mix. And one of like my projects that I did with Art House Jersey just happened to go for a swim with a lady who was the learning engagement producer. So it's all connections. You just never kind of know. That's how mine have sort of brewed.
Yeah, and I think one thing we try and do and Make It Happen is like, you know, it like all creative grants, they're competitive, but I think just going through the process, I try and make sure that me and my team are really hands-on in supporting people, realizing we can only fund so many. And you know, you might submit a brilliant project for Make It Happen, but what we do following, for anyone who's unsuccessful, we have drop-in sessions where we can give in-person feedback, and we try and send out a list of resources. And just with that, like I'd say of the 200 that applied, funded 16, about 20 other projects that were unsuccessful we've helped in some way. I've been working with a brilliant local creative called called David Anglin, who runs Red Light Busking, and he just received a 97k National Lottery Heritage Fund funded that we supported him with, that he's going to be doing in the borough. We supported other people get funding from different routes. So really worth applying, even if you're a little bit unsure. Also, it's great to just develop an application which you can think about. You've got a project there to think about kind of taking through other routes. We just got a few other questions here. One for Alice and Daniel. Mentioned almost preparatory stages for the projects to ensure people are at the same level of understanding about the project. How important would you say this is? Oh, I think you're on mute, Alice. Oh, go on, Daniel.
I was just going to say, I think when you're designing a project, particularly that is not, it's not come along and learn how to make a pot, but there's a level of like depth that you might be going into that is focused on people sharing stories, reflecting on their lived experience. It's really important to think about all the different factors. So, who are you asking to come to these sessions? It's a big difference if you say this project is for people with lived experience of schizophrenia to this is for people with mild mental health difficulties. So it's really important that you communicate who is this for, what kind of experience you might have, and set the parameters and boundaries to make sure that it's safe for people. And sometimes if you're actually thinking, I'd like to do quite an in-depth project supporting people with severe mental health difficulties or severe physical health difficulties, you might need to think about what support do I need in order to make this safe. So often if I'm working on a project that is for people with, severe mental health difficulties, I have to think about what partners might be involved and what kind of clinical support is available, because that's important in terms of safeguarding. And that's important in terms of how you communicate to potential participants who this is for, what kind of experience we hope that you might have, and this is what it isn't. Because within the sort of healthcare system, there is a real lack of people being able to access adequate clinical support. So people understandably sometimes think that a creative health project is a place where they can bring some of their difficulties. But it's really important that you understand and communicate what this is, what this isn't, and that everybody involved is on the same page, whether it's facilitators, partners, and participants, so that you can be really clear and then signpost if somebody needs additional support. Actually, this isn't the space for that.
Do you want to add anything, Alice?
No, that's here to that. Totally. I have seen another question come through about did you take any training that helped you work in the creative health as an artist? And I actually did. So Arts for Dementia, amazing charity, focusing on early stage dementia awareness and also how to provide art skills and work with people that are struggling with the early stage diagnosis. So I really, really recommend them. And that's probably like the only training I've had. The rest is as lived experience from my own lived experience. And then I'm also doing the workshops, and each workshop I'm always learning, always tailoring. And that's the same for my creative projects as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, both of my degrees are in photography, but more so from a health-related aspect. So both of my particular focuses were on how do you use creative methods to support people with mental health difficulties. But even then, to run workshops or a project working with other people, there's the technical and practical aspect. So you need to be able to know your craft, but a lot of it is also having really good interpersonal skills, and being able to be with people and think on your feet. And some of that comes through lived experience, that you just got good connections with people. You've been in situations where you've had to troubleshoot. Some of that, to be honest, has come through like me being in therapy for 20 years and being quite introspective and thinking about things from different perspectives. I've also done training to be an action learning set facilitator, but that's quite a rigid way of being with people, but it helps you understand sort of, a structure and way of working. And previously I was a volunteer at a suicide respite centre, which was all about sort of active listening. So it really helped me to be with participants, not want to rescue people, but sometimes a participant wants to make something, tell their story, and that's enough. They just want to be witnessed. and it's not about you trying to find a solution. It's about recognizing what is my role within this session, and my role is to be creative with that person, listen to them, and help them find their own solutions. So sometimes the things that you don't think are helpful as a creative facilitator are the things that you've been doing in your life in other aspects that kind of feed into the way that you can be with people that are really beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. Really helpful answers and insights there. We just have a few more questions that, again, I know we're getting to almost 8:30 now, but a question around, do other boroughs have similar types of funding to make it happen? Currently thinking location aspect. Yes, they do. I can't just all of a sudden think off the top of my own head, but what I'd suggest is just looking at a lot of local authorities, their websites and everything. Often, like, some of these opportunities can be shared through Arts Jobs or the Arts Council. But I was speaking to someone in Brent, partner in Brent, who are opening up new creative grants program. But I will be sure to try and compile a few similar creative grants programs. I maybe blowing the council's trumpet a little bit here, but I don't know of many other local authorities that offer a creative health grants program, which I know is new for Make It Happen, but it's brilliant to be trialing that out. But Daniel, do you have any?
I was just saying in the chat, it might be also helpful to look at sort of more London-wide opportunities through the Greater London Authority, through the Mayor of London's culture team. I know that in particular in Southwark, where I am, there's something called SHWEP, which is the Southwark Culture Health. I'm going to butcher it, but essentially a network of organisations and funders that are Southwark-based. So it might be worth looking at sort of what's localised in your particular area.
Oh, one thing to mention off the back of that, actually, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but it's Wandsworth that the next borough of culture, I believe, and they've got a big creative health focus. I know they've got a lot of jobs that they're already starting to recruit for, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of opportunities there around creative health. And following that, it will be Haringey, who also have a bit of a creative health focus to their bid. So it's just going to show how important it is and how much of value creative health has become strategically for all London boroughs and London-wide. Just want to read out a very nice comment from Gemini here, who said, "Thank you ever so much, everyone. Have to go now, but this has been wonderfully eye-opening. Appreciate your time." That's what we want to hear. Like, I hope other people have found this really useful. Just gonna go through the last remaining questions. So, can you submit an application for a participatory project that looks to support and maintain good mental health, as opposed to supporting those with mental health difficulties? If that's just in relation to Make It Happen, then yes. Yeah, it's about maintaining, good mental health and well-being is just as important. And I think what we would really like to see, though, is how is that supporting those underrepresented and marginalized groups that we tried to support as much as possible through the Make It Happen grants program. Sarah said, "I wonder about the ever-growing need in society and how people may find it hard to be for it to be a shorter term project, older adults who can benefit from more continuity." I guess, yeah, just to say off the back of that, like, I think there's always this restriction around project grants. They're going to be time restricted often, and that brings in quite a few challenges. That's why with Make It Happen, we have a focus in the funding criteria on legacy. That's something you get scored against. And I think what I always encourage applicants to think about is think about what you can do with the funding that you're applying for within that time frame, and don't try and make it this huge project which just isn't attainable. But think of this, especially because Make It Happen is seed funding, as a stepping stone. And what I always encourage people to do when they write an application, we want to see ambition, but we want to make sure that it's realistic what you can achieve. So outline what the project is, but even if it's a short sentence or a paragraph on, if I, in an ideal world, if I wanted this to grow and become this, an organization or a public realm artwork, or something that's larger scale, then just mention that in a few sentences and we're like, okay, so that's where you want to get to, and this is the entry point into that, and there are other ways of kind of getting there, but that might be in the next 2, 3, 10 years to actually get to that route. What else do we have here? Also, as part of receiving funding, do we have to have an evaluation model? How do we measure success? What I'd really recommend you doing, which Daniel mentioned earlier, is looking at the Creative Health Quality Framework. So that is a great benchmark for how you evaluate and monitor projects and measure impact for creative health projects. That looks at it 3 different scales, I think, as the individual practitioner, whether you're a creative health practitioner working in different settings, as an organization, and then as a local authority. And I've got that resource and the link to it on the Make It Happen webpage. So I really encourage you to look at that, because it's also learning that we're developing within the council. And what I'm trying to look at is, for those successful projects, bringing in an external evaluator that might have developed the Creative Health Quality Framework to support the successful applicants. We're thinking about, right, how do you measure impact, and how do you capture this in the best possible way in the context of a creative health project? Just some final ones. I'll take us up just for another 5 minutes. If we have any here. Thank you all so much. It might just be people. I don't think we have any more. Any final comments from Alice, Daniel? Final words of wisdom.
Final words of wisdom. Oh, I just want to hop back to what you were talking about earlier about, like, if you apply and say you don't get the role. I've had instances where I've done lots of applications and I haven't been successful, but they've put me forward for other opportunities and workshops, and then I've been able to cultivate that clientele and that relationship. So go for it. You never know what's going to happen. The world's your oyster, basically.
Wonderful.
Rejection is really hard, but if you don't apply, it's an automatic rejection. And sometimes a no here is like a yes somewhere else. And actually putting the work in to develop an idea and a sort of project proposal, once you've done it once, you've done it. And then there are other funders out there where you can think, okay, right, it didn't work out this time. Sometimes because things are just very competitive. But you can take that proposal, it's already formed, and think, okay, what other funders are out there? What other partnerships can I start to develop? So actually, I find it a real productive exercise in itself, even if it's unsuccessful, because you've done the work of pulling together the idea and thinking about, what do I want to do? How do I want to do it? And who do I want to do it with? And now, maybe it needs to go off in a different direction. But if you don't apply, you don't get anything. So, it's an exercise in itself that is useful.
Yeah, I echo that. And just for anyone asking, this has been recorded, and we will be putting it up on the Make It Happen 2024 webpage as a really useful resource. So you can look back at it, and other people can view it. It will eventually be taken offline, but after the whole application process. And yeah, thank you, Claire, for your comment about Daniel's lovely jumper, which is very lovely. Okay, I'm going to finish there, but thank you so much. And it's been so lovely to see everyone's comments saying how useful they found it. That's brilliant. Like, that's exactly what we want to hear. Thank you to Alice, Jasper, who I know maybe isn't on the call anymore, and Daniel. And like I said, there's 4 places left for that workshop on Monday in person at Good Shepherd Studios, 6:30, to look at writing a convincing and successful cultural grant application. So please do, if you're available, come along to that. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.